So welcome everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with Michael Kitces. So for this week's session, I wanted to talk about personality types and this whole question of is there a certain personality type that it takes to succeed as a financial advisor? And I hear this a lot from new planners looking to come into the profession, and particularly from career changers who may have had success in a prior career, in a prior track, in a prior profession, and are now looking to come over to financial planning and trying to understand, do they have the right fit or composition or style? So the question I got this week was from Katie, and Katie said, I'm on the fence about whether I have the personality to be successful in financial planning. I have a background in finance. I've been working in human resources most of my career. I've been looking for a change and an opportunity to have my own business and been interviewing with, call it a major broker-dealer that everybody would know the name of. Seems like a great company to build a foundation. They have plenty of support, but I'm hesitant to pull the trigger. And I'm wondering if there's a particular personality type that you need to have out of the gate in order to be successful as a financial advisor and build a client base. And I hear this a lot. Usually, most commonly, this is code for, do I have to be an extrovert to get clients and to succeed as a financial advisor? Right? That's kind of the conventional view. If you're going to go out there and get clients and sell them and persuade them to work with you, anything that's sales oriented, just societally, we always kind of think of those as extroverted oriented jobs. And most people I find when they ask this question, do I have the right personality type to be a financial advisor? It basically comes back to this question, do you have to be an extrovert to do it? And as Megan is saying here in the comments, no, you don't. You really don't have to be an extrovert in order to succeed as a financial advisor. I know a lot of introverts who are successful financial advisors and have built client bases and careers. I'm actually a rather strong introvert myself. And in fact, when you look at some of the research about introversion versus extroversion, one of the interesting themes that you actually see amongst introverts is that they tend to make fewer, closer relationships. I know we're going to overgeneralize a little about introverts versus extroverts, but there's some research to substantiate when you look at the relationship patterns of introverts versus extroverts. Extroverts tend to have a wider network of acquaintances. Introverts tend to have a smaller network of deeper relationships. And it's that wide network of acquaintances that extroverts often have that we associate with sales and business development and the rest. But the reality on the introvert side is having fewer, closer relationships, that's financial planning. That's going deep and getting to know a client and forming a relationship with a client. And that's a referral relationship, is having that deep connection to a select number of centers of influence who believe in what you do and want to refer clients to you. So it's really not a deal killer about being a extrovert to be successful in financial advising. In fact, Daniel Pink did a fantastic book a couple of years ago about selling and sales and who does well at sales and who doesn't. And he had covered this fascinating study that found actually the strongest extroverts are not the best salespeople. If you're actually too extroverted, no offense to any hardcore extroverts over there, you tend to bulldoze people a little bit and don't actually do a great job of connecting to the client situation. And particularly in a world like financial planning, where it's all about understanding client needs and client perspective, you really can be too extroverted. Now, certainly you can be too introverted as well. If you're utterly terrified to talk to another human being, you're kind of the quintessential extreme introvert. This may be rough as well. But what the research had found about introversion and extroversion and selling and business development is that the ideal is actually the middle. What they found was extroverts did better than introverts by a small margin, but it was there. But what they called ambiverts, which are basically people in the center, not heavily tilted one way or the other, actually did better than strong extroverts or strong introverts because they're more effective on the listening skills. Exactly as Eddie is saying, the listening skills and the ability to connect, that is, again, overgeneralizing a little, common amongst introverts, is very effective in financial planning and the kind of business development that we do. Another book I recommend on this, Susan Cain did a fantastic book called Quiet a few years ago, and she talked about this dynamic of introverts selling, doing business development, right? And I'm kind of the the interesting example of this, I'm a hardcore introvert who functions as a professional speaker, which is, shall we say, not exactly the classic profession you would think of for someone who's an introvert. But the reality that we find is, even for introverts, when you find something you're passionate about, that you're excited about, that really interests and stimulates you, it breaks down some of those classic walls that introverts have about being uncomfortable with other people or struggling to meet people. Now, if you put me at a cocktail party social event, I will still shrivel into a little timid wallflower. So if you're ever at a large party and event and you want to find me, seriously, look for the most distant corner from the noise. And that's where you'll find me, like, sitting down in a corner, because I'm really not very extroverted. But it's not a deal killer for building a business. It's not a deal killer for being a financial advisor. It's that connection that you can still make that actually introverts do well, that functions very well for kind of prospecting and selling. Now, the second caveat that goes with financial advising, when I think about kind of the personality types that it takes, as I said to Katie's question, most of the time when I hear this question about I'm not sure if I have the right personality type, it's basically code for I'm not that extroverted, am I going to be okay? And I think the answer is you are, or you can be. You still need to find something that you're passionate about in financial planning, get your knowledge, get your competency, get your skills up, get your personal confidence up, that you can talk passionately about what you do, but that's a surmountable challenge. Now, the second issue that comes up around financial advising and personality type, particularly for the direction Katie's talking about, where she's going to go get her own clients and kind of build her own independent advisor business, it's whether you have the mindset of an entrepreneur. You can work on a good platform that will give you the tools and the technology and the rest that you need to build a business, but building a business is hard. You're going to get rejected a lot, right? Most advisors I know, fantastic close rates are people that close half the clients they meet. That means half of them say no. Good close rates for most advisors is 30% of the people you meet say yes. Like, if you're doing a great job, 2/3 of the people you meet are going to say no to you and reject you to your face. That's hard. I mean, that's not an introversion versus extroversion thing. That's kind of a grit issue about just being able to take that level of ongoing that ongoing level of rejection that's just inevitable in any kind of sales and business development role, and be able to push through that. And then once you get some clients going, you'll have the first client who fires you, which is a whole other level of challenging rejection that we have to go through as business owners. Like, the reality, entrepreneurship in general, financial advising certainly is an example of it, is kind of a roller coaster. Like, there's big ups and big downs, and it moves all over the place. And if you're coming in as a career changer, often that gets amplified by financial concerns as well, because you may have existing family, kids, college looming, mortgage, other obligations. The virtue, at least if you can call it that, of coming in and starting your advisory firm as a 20-something is the stakes are a little bit lower, because just typically the level of financial obligations are not the same. Unfortunately, for a lot of folks coming in today, they've got some pretty hefty student loans and debt payments to deal with, but the dynamic isn't quite the same as what a lot of career changers struggle with, where, like, I got a house and a mortgage and a roof over my spouse and children, and, like, that's non-negotiable. I need to keep that. And that creates a lot of pressure around starting an advisory business, because now there's not only just the anxiety of getting clients and business development and rejection, there's also the financial stress that gets involved. Even in the best of scenarios, you have what I call the income gap between here's what you were earning, here's the zero you're going to earn out of the gate when you start your financial advisory career, and then you're going to take what realistically in most cases is years to build back to where you were. Now, the upside from there is fantastic. You look at most industry benchmarking studies, average advisor is making somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 once they've got several years of experience. That's 2 to 3 times the average household income in the US. So it's a fantastic career, and there's a lot of upside, but it's a huge dip before you get back to where you were. And as a career changer, just the mental fortitude, the grit, the kind of entrepreneurial drive, the optimism to be able to drive yourself through that, both personally and having a social support system really is crucial, or you're not going to make it through. You're going to get too stressed. You can get outright depressed. There are a lot of challenges for entrepreneurs that are struggling in their businesses. So just recognize that kind of grit dynamic as well. Now, I would note there is kind of a third path to this. If all this is feeling daunting for you, the third path is the path of what I call the employee advisor, which means you go and get your CFP, you join an existing advisory firm in what typically is a support role, and you climb a ladder at that firm. You may start out as a paraplanner, then you become an associate planner, then maybe you become a senior planner after 5 to 7 years, then maybe after 10 years you can become a partner at the firm. That multi-stage career track is increasingly evolving as a bona fide career track for financial planners. It exists predominantly in large team environments, whether that's large broker-dealer teams or larger independent RIAs that have built out team structures, where there's career track opportunity. Many of those firms, you don't even have either no sales responsibilities, or you may have to still do some selling, but no prospecting responsibilities because the firm brings the prospects in. This could be local RIAs, big ones like Edelman Financial Services has job opportunities like this, and even the so-called robo platforms, particularly the ones that aren't actually robos but are hybrids of humans and technology, services like Personal Capital and even Vanguard Personal Advisor Services have salary-based career track opportunities, or salary with bonus or some blend. You may still have to convince the people that call in or contact the firm to do business with you, but you don't have to go prospect. You don't have to go meet strangers and try to find people to do business with you. That dynamic doesn't exist in those firms. Now, the challenge to this is, frankly, your income potential is more limited. If you're not doing sales and business development the same way, if you're not building your own firm, if you're not taking the risk of entrepreneurship, you will not enjoy the same kinds of rewards. So you might make what, relative to the US, is still a very good income. Maybe you can make $75,000 after 3 to 5 years. Maybe you can make $100,000 after 5 plus. Maybe you can get to 125 or 150 after 7 to 10 years. By most career standards, that's a good income. But you're not going to see the upside that exists for financial advisory firm owners and founders that build it from scratch, where we see incomes that can hit 200 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand, 500 grand and up. That's the risk and reward of entrepreneurship and founding a business. But I think it's important at least to recognize that there's the entrepreneurial founder advisory firm path, and there's the employee advisor path. And you'll always have opportunities on the entrepreneurial end, because there are plenty of platforms who will say, given that we're not going to pay you anything anyways, if you want to build your business here and you turn out to be successful, great, we'll give you a shot, because there's not much risk to them. The jobs on the employee career track are fewer. There are not as many of them right now. The standards tend to be higher, right? They're going to want to see a CFP out of the gate, at least the exam and the coursework. You may not have the experience to have the marks. Your salary is going to start out lower. First paraplanner jobs at most firms might be $45,000 to $55,000, and depending on where you are geographically. And that's tough for a lot of career changers, because you might have been accustomed to making a higher salary where you were. And at least if you start your business, once you accumulate the clients, you can get back to your income. And if you can accumulate the clients faster, you can get back to your old income faster. If you're going to take an employee career track position, could be 3, 5, 7, 10 years of promotions that you got to work through to get back to where you were. So it's a tougher transition. You may find the work more rewarding in other ways, but at least recognize there's a big difference between salaried career track with slower progression, entrepreneurial track with a lot more upside, but a lot more risk and downside, and the possibility that you could do this for a few years and basically have no money to show for it. So you can kind of think of it as you want to do the bond version of your career or the stock version of your career, with all the attendant risk-return trade-offs of bonds versus stocks. Andy, you have a great question there about failure rate on new planning firms. So the numbers are kind of all over the place. If you look historically at places like large wirehouses that tended to recruit advisors in large numbers, put them out there and see who survived. The common rule of thumb when you started out in a wirehouse is look around the group of 5 of you, 4 of you are not going to be here in 3 years. 80% attrition rates were common. A lot of wirehouses I know have been pushing towards improving that, and they're really excited if they only lose 2 out of 3 new advisors instead of 4 out of 5. Sales and entrepreneurship is a tough business by any standard. Now, I see those numbers improving slightly as we get better about training people about career tracks. Certainly, if you come into an employee role, your odds of getting fired out of being a paraplanner is not nearly that high. You may or may not have the income upside that you wanted, but your downside is not the same. I think better platforms and better focus are helping that as well. When we look internally at XY Planning Network, we're not seeing failure rates remotely that high. We're seeing most people still in business and going after 2 to 3 years. We'll see whether a few of them still don't quite get to where they want, but we're not seeing that fall off after a year or 2 at all. With the caveat that even within XY Planning Network, we tend to get advisors that are a little bit more experienced and then starting their own firms, not necessarily entirely new to the industry and starting from scratch. But Katie, if there's, I guess, one thing that you take away from this, is to recognize if your question was about introversion versus extroversion, extroversion is not required. You may have a different dynamic about how you do business development as an introvert, but it's not a deal killer. But if you want to go get your own clients and build your own advisory business, that desire to be an entrepreneur, to have the grit to deal with the amount of rejection and the financial stress that just inevitably comes with starting a business and starting from zero or negative because you got some business expenses and no client revenue yet, that's actually probably the piece that is the biggest deal killer for those trying to come in to be a financial advisor. And if that's too daunting, you do have other options like trying to find an employee position, but just recognize that's a salary base that may be much lower than what you were doing in the past, and it may take longer for you to earn back to where you were. You can get back more steadily, but it may take you longer to get there. So I hope that's helpful with some food for thought around personality types and the issues that entails in trying to become a financial advisor. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll get back to normal time next week, office hours, 1 p.m. East Coast time on Tuesdays. Thanks for joining us. Great questions, everyone, today, and have a great day.